Well, welcome everyone to week 2 of Psalm 23. I just want to start today by thanking Jamie Bush for our amazing, beautiful books. I mean, they're incredible. I know you're going to have so much fun taking notes in them over the next few weeks. I also want to encourage you to wear your pink next week for our pink out. And I promised you I would start each week with some sheep trivia. So we're going to go dental this week. So here's a couple things you need to know about sheep. First of all, sheep grow 2 teeth a year until they have 8 total, and they have no top teeth. They just gum it from there. And a 2-year-old sheep is affectionately known as a 2-tooth. So if you happen to come across a sheep and it has 2 teeth, you know that it's 2 years old. So there you go. Now, last week we said that David was the youngest son of a shepherd himself, and later he became known as the shepherd king of Israel. He knew all about shepherds and shepherding and sheep. And we learned how God himself, of all the descriptors he could have chosen, picked shepherd as one of his names, and how Jesus also called himself the Good Shepherd. And we said that Psalm 23 is a picture of both the life and relationship our shepherd wants for us. And then when we live in that relationship with him, we will not lack anything. We're free to, and this was our word of the week, we're free to thrive. Now this week, we want to move on to the green pastures and quiet waters he leads us to. And I love how, if you think about it, green pastures are both living and they bring life. They're a source of rest and nourishment so sheep can thrive. I don't know when the last time you went outside on the grass and just laid there for a bit, but that's part of your homework this week. I think you could feel the life beneath you. Now, verse 2 says that the shepherd makes us lie down in green pastures. But the word makes doesn't mean forces, like you would take a 2-year-old and say, okay, you're going to lie here and take a nap. It literally means, and I want you to write this down, it literally means to interrupt. He interrupts me so I can lie down. So often God interrupts our ways or allows life to interrupt our ways so that we can rest in his way. And certainly COVID has done a really good job of providing a major interruption and disruption in all of our lives. But this is significant because one characteristic of sheep is that they're stubborn and they want their own way. In fact, Isaiah 53 tells us in verse 6, all of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. So the shepherd interrupts the sheep's way to help the sheep find their way to green pastures. And of course, when we read verses 1 to 3 about lying down in those pastures, you kind of just instinctively just go, ah. And I think most of us, though, are missing much of that in our experience. Again, this is because sheep don't rest well without following the shepherd. Now, sheep also need to be free from both hunger and thirst to be able to rest. And this is because hungry and thirsty sheep, they'll continue to follow their natural instinct, their natural bent of constant foraging and searching for food and water without either an interruption or knowing that they're safe with all they need right at hand. And of course, as a result, they just won't thrive. They'll become weary and tired and even more obsessed with foraging. But again, the kicker is they need to follow the shepherd's lead. And we also know that left to their own devices, hungry sheep, they will eat just about anything. And they'll overgraze the same area until there's absolutely nothing left. And because of this, shepherds actually went and prepared green pastures for their sheep over the summer. They didn't just happen by accident. They didn't just come upon them. They would clear rocks. They would remove poisonous weeds just to prepare the pasture. So the picture here is of the shepherd preparing green pastures ahead of time so his sheep can thoroughly enjoy what he has prepared. Think about all the pictures here. Now, verse 2 also says, the shepherd leads the sheep beside still waters so they can drink. And interestingly, again, the word drink means to accept or to take something in. And note that a sheep's body is actually composed of 70% water, which is very confusing. Like, what about all the lamb chops and everything? What's their part? But they are very much like us. If they get dehydrated, they get sick both physically and mentally. And if they don't have enough clean water, they'll just drink from polluted potholes where they could pick up all kinds of diseases. So they will drink from any old source they believe will satisfy the need. So now think about a time when you were really hot and thirsty and you reached for a soft drink instead of water. You know, initially you thought it was going to quench your thirst, but it really didn't satisfy. It seemed like it would, but in the end, it didn't deliver. So a good shepherd is keenly aware of the sheep's need for pure, clean water and how long his sheep have gone without it. And if there was no water, the shepherd would lead the sheep to tall grass early in the morning where there was dew on it so they could get the moisture from the grass. So tender. The shepherd also knows that sheep are afraid of rushing water. And part of this is because they're just not very sure-footed. They're kind of awkward. And so if they would get out there and stumble, their heavy coats would get all soaked up really fast with the water, and eventually they could drown. So when they would come to a river, he would lead them to a place where the water wasn't rushing too fast so that they could drink their fill in peace. Shepherds would even go so far as to gather up all the rocks and dam up a river to create a still water pond for their sheep to drink from. Again, such tender care. The point here is this: sheep are again going to follow their innate need for food and water. And if they aren't following the shepherd's lead, they're going to be constantly foraging for food and water from other places, which in the end won't satisfy or bring rest and will leave them either exhausted from the pursuit or in an extremely dangerous position. And on top of all that, sheep are naturally prone to succumb to what I call the myth of the greener grass. I mean, how many times have you been driving down the road in the country, seen a sheep with his head sticking through the fence, trying to eat the grass on the other side that's basically the same? So now, what does this look like on us? Well, I think the prophet Jeremiah paints another beautiful analogy in Jeremiah 2:13. It says this: "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, to hew for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." Now, a cistern in Bible times was a holding tank of sorts of clay. It was made of clay for water. But a broken or a cracked cistern then was obviously no good in the end. And of course, the reality is, we're all thirsty. I mean, that's the way God designed us. We're made that way. But because we don't go to the fountain of pure and living water, we just start digging, or in the sheep's case, foraging to meet the need elsewhere. And then we realize the cistern has a leak. It was broken in the first place. So then what we do is we go out, we pick up our shovel, and we dig somewhere else. And on and on and on we go. And then we become exhausted from digging cisterns that chronically have leaks in them. So it looks like this. Something goes wrong. We're already thirsty for God, but we may not even be aware of that's why we're thirsty or who we're thirsty for. So we just focus on fixing whatever's wrong, thinking that's going to quench our thirst. And we pick up our favorite shovel to dig a cistern. And I know some of us have a collection of shovels for different situations or people or circumstances. But we pace and we plan and we eat chips and we hash and we rehash. We phone a friend. We go to more Bible studies. We Netflix. We eat chocolate. We gossip. We work harder at work, we eat some ice cream, we keep our house perfect, we pour ourselves into our kids or a hobby, even church. We have an affair, we pop a pill, we drink a bottle, it just goes on. But as we pick up our shovels and we dig and dig, sometimes multiple cisterns at once, we begin to discover that the water's already trickling out, or it's polluted from what leached in from the crack. And here's what I know. As believers, green pastures of nourishment and rest, along with these still pure waters, you guys, they're right in front of us. And we're going to see more and more of how that works over the next few weeks. But today, I'm going to call all of us, each one of us, to a raised level of awareness of what our shovels are, when we're inclined to pick them up, and a commitment to lay them down instead of striving and digging for the rest and refreshment we all need and want. And I'm challenging us to follow our shepherd, to follow him to the green pastures and the still waters that he's already prepared, rather than continue foraging on our own, so that we can thrive, as we position ourselves under the shepherd's care. So I know you have a lot of great things to talk about in your groups, and I can't wait to see you right back here next week.